Before we get into it, keep in mind this video goes for all e-bikes. Should you build or buy an e-bike is a question that has been circulating around my comment sections lately, probably triggered by my last video where I did an update on this e-bike that I'm building for my friend, as well as answering some of your guys' questions. Now, the comment that conceived this question was this one guy who stated that he bought one of these e-bikes off of Alibaba for $3,500 and that he didn't see why it was worth it to go out of your way to build one of these. Now, of course, a lot of people replied to that comment, stating why they think it's better to build one or why they think it's better to buy one, and they all brought up good points. But in today's video, I'll be bringing up the best points for each of them, and I'll have you guys decide which one is better. Now, if you haven't already, make sure to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like this video, and leave a nice comment down below so that I can continue to do more great videos like this. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so first off, let's start with the benefits as well as the cons of buying one of these e-bikes. And now I'm talking about these Enduro e-bikes specifically, although this could go for any e-bike. Now, benefit number one of buying one of these e-bikes as opposed to building it is you get it shipped to your house in maybe a few boxes, and then assembly is very, very simple. Typically these things cost like $3,000 to $4,000 on Alibaba, which is around the same price that you're going to build one of these for. And it's very hassle-free. They do most of the work for you. It gets to your house, and then you have to put on maybe the forks in the front wheel and a few different parts. But, there's instructions, and it might take a few hours with your friends to assemble the bike. Whereas, if you wanted to build one of these, or build assemble as I like to call it, you have to outsource all of the parts from different places online. You have to get them shipped to your house. Then you have to build the bike from top to bottom, which might require drilling holes and doing all sorts of things that you wouldn't have to do if you just bought the bike in whole, from Alibaba. And that's a big appealing factor to a lot of people, because a lot of people just want to get their bike, and as soon as they get it, they just want to get it on the road and have fun with it. And that's a big benefit for a lot of people of just buying one of these bikes from Alibaba. Now, the second pro of buying one of these bikes as opposed to building it is sort of how the warranty system works. Now, let's say something breaks down while you're on the road and you've only put like 50 miles on the bike. Let's just use the motor cable, for example. That's sort of a common breaking point for a lot of these bikes, obviously, because the motor cable goes into this motor. The motor is spinning really fast, and if something gets put out of place, that motor cable can get cut up by the motor. Believe me, I have experience with this happening. Now, because you bought the bike and you didn't assemble the bike yourself, you weren't the one who put the motor onto the axle. So obviously the person who assembled the bike is at fault for that happening. Because of that, you can contact the company, and if they have a good warranty system, they'll probably end up sending you a brand new motor, because that's not your fault. That's their fault. Now, let's say you built this bike and the same thing happens to you. You're riding the bike, and after, a few miles, the motor cable ends up getting torn up. In that case, the company that sold you the motor really does not have to send you a new one. And it makes sense. Basically, you were the one who put the motor onto the axle of the bike. You were the one who probably made the mistake that ended up getting that motor cable damaged. So really, the company who sold you the motor is not responsible. And that's why it's good for a lot of people to just buy these bikes in whole, because if something breaks on it, then they can just get sent a new part to put on it. Really, no questions asked. So that's another benefit to buying one of these bikes as opposed to building it. Now that we've gone over the pros of buying one of these bikes as opposed to building it, let's go over the cons. Now, my first issue with buying these bikes from websites like Alibaba is you don't know exactly what parts you're getting. Now, I've heard this from a lot of my commenters, as well as just doing general research, that they'll claim that they use Samsung batteries in their bikes, when in reality, the batteries they're using are made up of these cheap generic Chinese cells that go bad in about 150 charge cycles, which is not very good. Also, I've heard just general quality control issues, things, breaking, before they should, just because they're poorly put together. And, that's just something that kind of turned me off from buying these bikes from Alibaba, and made me want to build one for myself instead. And yeah, I'm not saying they're bad when you buy them. I've heard a lot of positive reviews from that. But that's just something that I think you should be wary about, and definitely see if there's any reviews below the bike listing on Alibaba, before you pull the trigger. Now, the second con about buying one of these bikes is you don't quite have the technical knowledge that you would have if you would have built it. Now, the reason this is important to have, technical knowledge about the bike in general, is because let's say something breaks on your bike and your warranty can't cover you. Now, first off, you have to diagnose the issue, which if you did not build the bike yourself, you probably won't know exactly what the issue is right off the bat, so that might take some time. Then you have to figure out where you can buy that part again. Maybe you have to contact the company that sold you the bike, or you have to go searching on the internet. Then you have to figure out how to replace that part, which is a whole other thing. And it can just take a lot of time to figure out how to fix the bike if it breaks and your warranty can't cover you. Now, if you were to have built the bike, chances are you have all of the tools and parts just sitting at your place. You can bring the bike back to your place and fix it. And 90% of the time, you'll be back on the road, within an hour or two, because you've probably been confronted with those problems while building the bike. So that's the second con I'd say to buying one of these bikes as opposed to building it. Now, without further ado, let's get into the pros and cons of building one of these bikes. All right, so first off, let's start with the pros. Now, in my opinion, the main reason somebody would want to build one of these bikes is for the build experience. The process of getting all of the parts shipped to your place and then taking them out, unboxing them, and then putting the bike together. Doing that, you learn so much. And even though it seems like an intimidating project at first, once you complete it, you feel very accomplished. You've learned so much. And then the bike just really seems like a very simple project to you after you're done with it. Like, I mean, personally, right now, to me, I can pretty much visualize the whole bike and how the internals work. But before, when I started my first build, I was just pretty intimidated by it. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this, but it's definitely worth it. You learn so much. And I've learned more about electric vehicles in the last 6 months of building these things than I have ever. So that's pro number one. Although the bike costs $3,800, the knowledge you get from building one of these is absolutely priceless, and it'll allow you to take on bigger, more complicated projects in the future. So pro number two of building one of these bikes as opposed to buying one is you know what every single part on them is. So you went out online, you did your research on all of the parts, you made sure that every part was the part that you wanted to put on your bike. So you can sort of customize it to your likings. Maybe you're a shorter guy, so you want to build the bike so the seat is maybe a little bit lower, or you're a taller person, so you want to figure out how to build extensions for the seat on the bike so that it fits your 6'5" frame. There's just a lot of customization, a lot of possibilities with this bike if you're building it yourself. You know what every single part is on the bike, and you can really make it how you want it. It's an empty canvas, and you can build it just for you. And that's something that I really like about building these bikes. There's endless possibilities, and there's never going to be a bike that's just like yours if you're building them. So that's a pro. So pro number three of building your own e-bike as opposed to buying one is people will respect you for it. Now, most people know absolutely nothing about e-bikes. I don't blame them. I mean, people have lives, unlike people who build e-bikes. I'm just kidding. But, even people who own their own e-bikes, they just don't really know how they work. And, when I explain things about e-bikes to them, they're absolutely amazed. They don't really understand what I'm talking about either because I sound like an alien to them because I stutter a lot. Or it's just because, they don't know. They've never heard this stuff. I might explain that batteries are made out of battery cells and they have a battery management system to manage, charge and discharge. And they're absolutely amazed by that. And I get a lot of respect for it because people are like, that's an amazing thing that this person did. And yeah, honestly, I like the attention. So that's pro number three of building your own e-bike. Now, there are plenty of more pros, but for the sake of not making this video 2 hours long, let's get right to the cons. So con number one with building these e-bikes is things can go wrong. I've had 3 events where things went wrong that I could have prevented. The first, big thing for me was my first controller broke, essentially. So basically, I got my bike turned on. I was so excited to use it. I took it outside, went up and down the road, and then it shut off. And I brought it back into my room. I was super disappointed. I was mad at the controller because I thought the controller was just faulty, but I didn't run the Hall sensor test. And if you don't run the Hall sensor test, your bike will not work and something's going to end up getting broken, either your controller or your motor. And it was my controller, luckily, because the controller is actually cheaper than the motor. I ended up bribing the company for a replacement, and I got my replacement for free. But still, you have to run your Hall sensor test. If you don't do that, it's not a good thing. My second thing that happened that was sort of a big deal was my first original battery connectors ended up getting melted off. Midway through a ride, I was 10 miles from my house, 10 miles from my destination, so I had to walk all the way to my destination. I replaced those battery connectors with some EC8 connectors, have worked beautifully the last 2,000 miles. And then the third big thing happening that I could have avoided, but it's just my luck, is this motor cable getting torn up. I tried to fix it. I soldered back to all the connections, but I'm still getting Hall sensor errors. So I think there's something going on deeper inside of the motor. So I'm going to open it up. I have a replacement motor cable getting sent to me, so I'm going to do that and make sure to replace that motor cable. But other than that, this motor is pretty good. It just needs some fixing up to do. But yeah, things can go wrong with building these e-bikes, and it's a headache, but it's also a learning experience, which is the main reason we do this stuff. Now, the next con with building these bikes that I can think of is shipping delays. Now, a big part of building these bikes is ordering your parts and getting them to your place. Let's say you pay for premium shipping for every single part. All right, you spent an extra $300-$400 on premium shipping. You want everything to get to your place quick so you can get this bike built as fast as possible. And one thing gets caught up in a shipping delay. What are you going to do about it? There's not really anything you can do about it. Every part you've ordered is going to get to your place in 2 weeks, except for that one part. And it's just going to be a huge disappointment to you because you spent all that money just for one thing to get caught up in a shipping delay. And now your bike's going to take a lot longer than expected. So that's another thing, that's really annoying about building these bikes. Shipping delays, man, you gotta hate them. So yeah, that's about a wrap for our video. Obviously, there's more things to be said on both sides. But yeah, in my opinion, I like to build e-bikes because I think it's fun. I learn a lot, gets views on this YouTube channel, which I always love. And it's overall just a good experience to have. Obviously, if you want to buy an e-bike just like this, have the bike at your door, you can do that. I don't really care. But yeah, in general, if you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. Leave a nice comment down below. Make sure to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You guys have been killing it lately. I've gotten like 23 subscribers today. I've been getting like 20 subscribers average the last few days. So absolutely incredible. Without further ado, I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.